Hello YouTube, this is Bruno. With our new nether parameter in place, it was time to build a Witherskeleton farm. And I came up with a summer new design that gives over 5,000 skulls per hour, making this one of the fastest Witherskelly farms around, at least in 1.21, where you can't use update suppression. This farm does use the world border, and let's look at the rates. In my simulation in single player, of course under ideal conditions, we get over 5,000 skulls per hour, over 78,000 bone blocks per hour, that's bone blocks, not bones, and 19,000 blocks of coal. The white items are the one we trash at the end. You see we lose a few bones, a few coal blocks, but not enough to move the needle. If you want, you could set up a filter for blaze rods, but 50 per hour is not enough to matter in my opinion. This is in Minecraft 1.21.10, which is the latest version at the time of recording. Therefore, the farm does not use update suppression or other nasty tricks. It can be built on any survival server or on any single player world. We do use the world border, however, in order to keep the lag down, but the principle of the farm could also be used without a world border. So we, that's me and two friends, Seaward and Iceorbs, we have designed and tested the farm here on the Hemisphere survival server, a hermitcraft like SMP. And you can see the farm is running like a charm. It looks a bit different because we decorated a bit. So for example, we used black stained glass instead of smooth stone slabs and mud instead of dirt. I'm using hitboxes for entities so that you can see a bit better. The design uses minecarts like Stromness Whiskey Train or Dave Rooney's variant. But unlike these designs, we'll make the farm two-dimensional and send the withers into portals instead of killing them right here in the nether, making this a two-player farm. So one player spawns in the Witherskellies and another player sits in the Overworld and kills them there. Because of the high rates, we called the farm the Witherskeleton Train Fairgrounds, Legion of Loot. So we've been running this farm for maybe 6 or 7 hours, and as you can see we already have 16 shulker boxes of wither skulls, plus a few that are accessible here. We have tons of coal and even more bone blocks. And I think from a bone meal perspective, 78,000 bone blocks per hour, that's 700,000 bone meal per hour, give or take a bit. So I think this is also one of the fastest bone meal farms that you can build. And the fact that we have a world border at 10,000 blocks does help us to set up the farm. But don't worry, I will show you how you can build a similar farm without the world border. It will be a bit more laggy. You can also adapt the farm to single player, and you don't even need a perimeter, although in these cases the rates will be lower. And the good news is that you don't need a specific fortress for this farm. You can basically use any fortress. Of course, the larger, the higher the rates could be. So you don't need something highly specific like 3 crossroads next to each other or something like that. But first things first, let's show you the design in creative without the decoration. A nether fortress has an inner and an outer bounding box. So the outer bounding box is this yellow here, and this encapsulates the whole fortress. The inner structures, shown in red, are only these structures that are generated, like the walkways, the crossings, the netherworld rooms, and so on. And the difference is that on the outer structure, mobs can spawn on nether bricks. So as long as we are in the yellow area, we can spawn fortress mobs on these nether bricks. However, we will get all fortress mobs. So we will get blazes, we will get zombified piglins, we will get magma cubes, and we will get wither skeletons. The inner structures are different. If we are in the inner structures, so let's remove these, then mobs will spawn on any blocks, as long as they are spawnable, unlike glass. And what we can do is just place dirt, and fortress mobs will spawn on dirt, and we can add wither roses. And now only wither skeletons can spawn in these areas. And this is what we use to design these fortress farms. So we find the inner structures and build only in the inner structures. And this is how you can design the spawning platforms. You find the inner structures, you fill it with dirt, you plant nether roses on it, you add a few nether bricks as a pack spawning skirt, and then you end up with these platforms, And then you can worry about where you have the minecarts running and where you place the piglins. In the end, of course, everything outside of the dirt must be unspawnable. So here we just use buttons on the platforms. You could also use pressure plates or bottom slabs or glass. The fortress that we used here does have 5 crossings, which is rather nice, because crossings are the largest structure, but we use a lot of the other structures too. So for example, this was a netherworld room. Here on top we just have walkways. Here we also have walkways. Down below we have a few wider walkways. So you can spawn wither skeletons in any of the inner structures. You don't have to resort to crossings alone. Let's also explain how we handle the mob cap here. As you probably know, a player is limited to 70 mobs per player. However, mobs in minecarts and boats and mobs in other dimensions don't count. And basically, if we want high rates, then we need to get these skellies into the minecarts as fast as possible. And by doing that, we eliminate them from the mob cap. So the sequence is this: the Witherskeletons spawn, ponder their life choices for about a second, then they see the piglins, aggro on them, and walk towards them. They try to get as close as possible, which is adjacent to the minecarts, so they will be picked up by the next empty minecart. Then they don't count towards the mob cap while in the minecart, and they are ejected into a nether portal, into the overworld, so they don't count against the nether mob cap either. So the Witherskeletons only count towards the mob cap while they are walking towards the piglins. And the faster they reach the railing, the faster they will be picked up by a minecart. And in fact, the fastest way to pick up Witherskeletons would be an arrangement like that, where whenever they spawn, they are picked up almost immediately. However, the drawback is that this way we waste a whopping third of our spawning spaces, because we have rails every third block. And for the purposes of spawning, it doesn't matter if we have 1 mob in a mob cap or 69, the spawning results will be the same. We will get a spawn. So there's no benefit to trying to make the number of mobs as low as possible. On the contrary, we want to get close to the mob cap without having it reached for a significant time. So what we do in our farm is to use a few more rails than other Witherskelly farms, like Stromness, but not quite a rail every third block. In fact, we tried to have the mob caps rather close to 70. So what we're trying to do here is to optimize the amount of spawning spaces while still being under the mob cap. And here in this farm you see that we are usually in the 50s or 60s with our mob cap, which is exactly what we want to have. The mob cap is full for only a fraction of the time, so in most cases all of the spawns will succeed. And we have a quite large number of spawning spaces by spacing out the rails like this. Other designs like Dave Rooney's use this trapdoor configuration, so the Witherskellies walk to the trapdoors and fall down and are picked up by the minecarts at the bottom. This allows you to use less minecarts, but of course it also requires a lot more time for the Witherskellies to walk there. Also you see that these spawning platforms are huge. So in our designs we pick up the Witherskellies a lot faster, and that allows us to use more spawning platforms. Also, the use of a lot smaller modules makes this design more robust. I mean, shit happens in survival, and if something goes wrong, you'll have to fix just a small area with a few minecarts. And of course, the use of a lot of small modules allows you to have a lot more minecarts, which allows you in turn to pick up the Witherskellies a lot faster. So let's have a closer look at the design choices. So why do we use piglins? You can also use iron golems, but iron golems are laggier than piglins. In my test I had 6 MSPT from iron golems while being under 3 MSPT from piglins. So essentially piglins produce only half of the lag than iron golems. Also piglins are smaller and you can place them 1 block closer. And of course it's a bit of an effort to capture the piglins, but I created a video for a piglin capturing machine a couple of days ago. And with these machines it's actually quite easy to capture the piglins, and now you just need to move them over to the farm. Now, using portals has the drawback of making this a 2-player farm. However, the rates are about 3 times as much as the rates from other farms like Stromness Whiskey Train. So if you play on a server, then maybe another player will agree to run the farm together with you. Now the farm does cause a bit of lag because of all the minecarts and the entities. About 25 MSPT on my computer. On our server, the farm in full operation takes about 10 MSPT. About a third of that are the minecarts. That's not too bad, and we have room to add a few more if we want. Using the world border allows us to have the portals literally anywhere and link them to the overworld portal. So regardless into which portals we go, we always end up at the same portal in the overworld. Now on our server we have a world border out at 10,000 blocks, which is rather nice. It keeps the world size limited and we don't need any pig cannons or other weird stuff to get to the farm or to the storage. Now you might wonder why we have these trapdoors on these grindstones. Without these trapdoors it will sometimes happen that the Witherskeletons are exactly opposite the piglin, stand there and swing and are not picked up by the minecart. Like that. These trapdoors and the grindstones are a configuration that enforce that the Witherskeletons will be always close enough to the piglins, and of course these grindstones have the magical properties that a Witherskeleton standing here will decide to go either left or right and not to stand there and wait. So basically we placed one grindstone and one trapdoor opposite of each piglin. So as to the minecart transport, you see that we run the minecarts first over an activator rail, which ejects the Witherskeletons into the portal. These glass blocks make sure that they are not ejected to the other side. And then we run the minecarts down into a lava cauldron, which will convert them into items, break them. And we have actually two hoppers going into the side here, so this is the hopper configuration. We had issues on our server with minecart loss, so in single player everything was fine, but on the server we would lose minecarts. But this configuration appears to be stable, where we don't lose any minecarts. At the bottom of each unit, this is one unit, you're having several circuits. We have a clock that controls the time we send the minecarts, and we use these scaffolding towers to send a signal here, so this trapdoor goes on and off. Whenever it changes, it will send a signal up the scaffolding, which is read by these observers. You can adjust these clocks depending on the size of the modules. So if you have a large module, you want to have the minecarts in a high frequency, in this case every 8 game ticks or every 0.4 seconds. If you have a smaller module like that, you can use a slower clock and have a bit more space between the minecarts. One double chest of minecarts should be enough buffer. If you need more minecarts, then your line is probably too long. Check out, for example, this walkway here. It's fairly long. We have one minecart line, and still one double chest is sufficient. We have an on-off switch for all of the minecarts here, so hitting the switch will block all of the clocks. If you look at the rail configuration, you'll see that we haven't used any unpowered rails. We only use powered rails on activator rails. This is absolutely necessary. If you use unpowered rails, for example, to go around these corners, then eventually your minecarts will bump into each other. You will lose minecarts due to the lava cauldron, or you'll just get a minecart jam here. So there are basically two configurations how you can go around the corner. One is to go one block down like this, but you always have to start with a sloped rail. And the other configuration is to go one block up like this. So for our spawning platforms, we always use this configuration. Another thing that you need to be aware of, you must be very careful in spawn-proofing all spawnable spaces outside of our dirt platform, using buttons, pressure plates, bottom slabs, whatever. So if you forget just a single button, eventually some mob will spawn here, some Witherskelly. The Witherskelly will walk over to the piglin and kill it. It will walk onto this rail and collide with the minecarts and cause again a minecart jam. So be very, very diligent in spawn-proofing everything, and the only place where mobs can spawn are the places inside with the wither roses on dirt or on mud. That's basically the spawn area. Now let's look at this. Let's look at the overworld and go to peaceful there for a moment. So all of the Witherskeletons will come out of this portal, be hit by our AFK player here using the sweeping edge armor stand. Here we have an armor stand replacement system. So if you play on a server and the armor stand will break, it will be sucked in by this hopper and immediately redispensed. The Witherskellies land on the cobwebs, and we did have slightly higher rates with these cobwebs here. If the Witherskellies falling out of the portal land in these cobwebs, I'm not quite sure if they prevent entity cramming, perhaps. In any case, the Witherskellies will land here, will be killed, the drops will fall through. Then we have this carpet pusher that lets nothing through, not even a one high zombie piglin baby. The drops go into this water elevator, and the drops will go into this other portal, back to the nether, because we have our storage in the nether. This other portal must be higher, this way the Witherskeletons will come out at this portal here. We have an iron golem here, and the iron golem will attract both skeletons, normal skeletons, they can spawn in the portals, and Witherskeletons. They will try to go here, will fall down. The turtle egg is there to lure zombified piglins. And finally, let's have a look at the collection system back in the nether. So the drops come out of the portal, are caught by this moving stairs, and the slime pusher will first push it a bit back, and then on the other side along these filters. The reason for that is that we want the portal to chunk load the whole area. So this portal and the items coming out will chunk load a 3x3 area. So you see we have the area where the items are exactly in the chunk loaded area. So all of the storage is loaded by the portal. We don't need another chunk loader. And here the items, as usual in the nether, are aligned against the honey block, which is not a full block. So they go partially over these filters. And we use double speed filters here. So this is the usual setup. A normal item filter here with a full hopper below. And then the bones will first go into a crafter that crafts the bones to bone meal. And then it will go into a crafter that crafts the bone meal to bone blocks. Since the bone meal arrives in multiples of 3, we don't need to worry about crafting white dye. And we have 18 of these modules for the bones and 10 of these modules for the coal. For the coal, we just send the items into a crafter. So the coal is crafted to coal blocks. The coal block will go into this dropper, and the dropper is quasi-powered. And to power all of these crafters and the droppers, we just use an observer clock here that is activated by this pressure plate. So if items go over the pressure plate, we will get a redstone signal here. This will activate this pulse extender. This activates this observer clock. And this powers all of these crafting systems. And the last two filters are for the Witherskeleton skulls. And of course, all of the items go into shulker box loaders. These are the usual loaders by Glotz. And this powerful storage is barely able to handle the output from the farm. Now, using the world border, you could increase the rates even more by using more bots to spawn these Witherskeletons. So, for example, we have a fortress here that we use, but there's another fortress over there, also in our perimeter. So we could just rig this fortress in the same way we did our first fortress, place another AFK player here, and we would basically double the amount of Witherskeletons that we would get. So what do we have to change if we have no world border? Well, so we still need the core component that all Witherskelly come out at the same portal in the overworld. And the way portal linking works, we can do the following. And this marker is just for your convenience. We pick one block here in the middle, this glowstone block, and we declare this the center of the farm. And we will build the overworld killing chamber at the coordinates corresponding to this block. So we take the X and Z coordinates, multiply them by 8, and get the coordinates of our overworld portal. And then we can go 15 blocks in each direction, and all the portals that are built in this area, and the Y coordinate doesn't matter, only the X and the Z coordinates, all the portals built in this area will link to this portal that we just built. And that's the way we handle it. So basically we have this area here that I marked out for you, and all of the portals must be in this area. And this means, of course, that our railcard lines will be a bit longer, but otherwise it's exactly the same principle. Now the lag is a bit up naturally because we have more minecarts. The rates in this case are down because I didn't connect all of the spawning areas. I didn't try to get the highest rates out of this farm. I wanted to make a proof of concept so that you can see how this can work. If you check out Mini Hut, then you can see that we have plenty of spaces, so we can extend the farm if we want. And here we also have plenty of spaces to build more portals. The way this is set up, and I will include this as an additional world download, we get about 3,700 wither skulls. So this is about 2/3 of the big farm. But again, this is due to the fact that we have fewer spawning spaces. Here in this world download, you can also see how you can use a centralized clock for all of the minecarts. So here we have a simple 10 game tick clock. The signal is sent to the scaffolding tower, and we have observers relaying the signal to other scaffolding towers using this construct. So we pulse this rail whenever the status changes, and then we can update a copper bulb, and this will trigger the trapdoor accordingly. There are a lot of options how you can build this. Obviously, you can choose the one that you like best. This world download also demonstrates how you can build a storage in the overworld. There, of course, you don't need slime pushers. Instead, you can use water streams. Otherwise, it's exactly the same storage, exactly the same principle. Just the item transport is done using water streams, which is a bit easier in the overworld. Basically, the kill chamber is the same. Just the items are put into snow blocks to kill the momentum. Then they fall straight down into the water stream. You could, however, link the items back to the nether with a second portal here. In this case, you would have to build the storage high in the air, roughly at the same area where Steve is. Then you would have the storage in the nether as well. Now you've seen how we adapt this to a world without a world border. Now I will show you how you can adapt this to single player. Or if you play on a server, if no one else is in the overworld, this will work as well. And here we take another trick. We change the square of 31 by 31 blocks to a half square. And you can orient this in any way that you want, but all of the portals must be in one half. And again, we have the overworld portal corresponding to this glowstone block. And now note that we have one direction open, and this is in case is west. So all of the portals are to the east of our glowstone block. Okay, and now we use the overworld bridge that basically is the same bridge that you've seen in a lot of farms like Enix or Forest farms, where we just have two portals. The mobs come out at this portal, push each other over the overworld bridge, push each other in the other portal, and this bridge has to be long enough and wide enough so that pretty much most of the Witherskeletons will take 15 seconds to get there, and that we don't get a lot of entity cramming. So you see they're taking a bit of damage. We have a bit of entity cramming, but it's not too bad. Maybe we should make the bridge a bit longer or a bit wider. Maybe this would get better results. And let's go to peaceful for a moment, so that it's easier for you to see what's going on. And you see we don't have a lot of drops from entity cramming. That's good. So this bridge is oriented from east to west. So this is westwards. The east portal is one block lower than the west portal. And we have the slab here so that the mobs can push each other into this portal. This makes sure that all of the Witherskellies from our farm arrive at the east portals, and they will push each other to the west portal, and the west portal will link back to our kill chamber high in the nether. We have built this portal in the overworld high in the sky for two reasons. First, if Witherskellies push each other through the portal without being 15 seconds here, they will fall down and will die from fall damage, because there's no player in the overworld, they wouldn't just despawn. And the other thing is that it makes the linking easier, because we are that high in the sky. The game will, in this case, look for the highest portal in the nether, and this portal is basically built over our glowstone block, just one block to the west. And that's the whole trick to make sure that all of the portals link up. The kill chamber uses boat looting this time. So boat looting is a trick that the mobs are sucked into boats immediately, so we have 24 boats in each of these positions. Because the Witherskeletons are in the boats, they don't count against the mob cap either. So all of these mobs here will not count against the mob cap. That means our spawning areas are free. We have an armor stand oriented like this, so you can place it and use a knockback sword to put it in place, or you can use pistons to push it in the corner. but if you put the armor stand there, you will hit all of the mobs. The player has a sweeping edge, smite, looting and mending sword, and we have a regen beacon, of course. And now the collection is very similar to our other nether collection. We have a bit larger pusher because of the size of the boat looting. The drops fall into cobwebs, once again eliminating all momentum. So from the cobwebs they fall straight down onto this pusher here, and then we have the same slime pusher that we had in the main farm. Again, this is the reduced spawn area with lots of other space if you want to. The rates are pretty much the same, once again 3760 skulls, so we don't lose a lot to entity cramming. However, the lag can get pretty bad from the Witherskellies pushing each other in the overworld. So you have roughly 600 mobs in the overworld at the same time in the same space. So this can get quite laggy. Of course, I will also add this as a world download. So this is the single player variant of this farm. But keep in mind, if you build the single player variant on a server, if any other player is in the overworld but more than 128 blocks away, the mobs will immediately despawn in the overworld. So if you do this on a server, I would probably go to one of the two-player variants. The world download contains these command blocks. Of course, they are not part of the farm. You can use them to spawn in the carpet bot. So just hit the button, and if the bots land on these glass blocks, which sometimes happens because the game thinks a moment before it spawns the bot, just hit the block again. And you will have two bots, Alex and Steve. Steve will be AFK here on top of the farm, and Alex will be AFK in the kill chamber. In single player, there's no command block. You simply activate the farm, you send the minecarts, then you go up to the AFK spot, stand here in survival, and swing at the armor stand. So I hope you guys had fun with this neat little farm. We certainly had fun designing and building it. Runs like a charm. Gives us all the wither skulls, coal and bone blocks that we will ever need in a very short time, very efficiently. I will include the 3 world downloads I talked about. I will also include light medicas for a single crossing and a 3-fold crossing so that you know how to build them. But otherwise, I'm afraid the design of the modules and the rails are a bit of a custom job that depend heavily on the layout of your fortress. Thanks for watching, leave a like if you want to see more content like this. Please subscribe so that you don't miss any of my videos, and see you next time, bye bye.